Welcome, students. Today we're going to be talking about construction techniques, and you're going to learn a few skills that form the foundation of all the constructions that you may want to do. So for this first one, we are going to talk about how to copy a line segment. Now, in order to copy a line segment, all we're really talking about is copying its length. Now, normally when we're operating with a paper and pencil, we have two tools. One is a straight edge, usually a ruler. So it's just something that we can draw perfectly straight lines with. Here we've got, here's our version of a straight edge, which will allow us to create segments, create full lines, or create just a ray. Okay, so that's what this is going to allow us to do. We can draw points and add a label to those points. The other part of constructions is using a compass. Now, a compass is good for creating circles or arcs. This one is always going to create a full circle every time we use it. Now, using only these tools, we need to be able to create a copy of this line segment. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to first, starting on A and then going to B, create this circle. Now, a circle is going to have the radius always be the same no matter where on that circle. Now you'll notice when I create this circle, I'm giving this option to duplicate it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to create that same circle, but just over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and call this point. Notice we want to copy AB, but create the segment CD. So I'm going to go over here, make this point be point C. So point C is going to be like my point A. Now I just need to make that same length. Since this is the same circle, anywhere along this circle, I can go ahead and put another point. This one's going to be point D. I'm going to go ahead and switch from my pencil, which is light, to my pen that is dark. And now I can connect C to D, and there, I have created a line that is the exact same length. I have copied the segment. All right, so that's our first tool. Remember, when we want to copy a length, we're going to be using circles. We're going to be using a compass in order to do that, because this circle has the same radius as this circle. So going from the center to the edge, we know we will create that same length. That is an important concept for us to remember as we are doing constructions. All right, next we're going to use our techniques to make a copy of ABC. So copying this angle and creating a new angle, DEF. So let's go ahead and let's start with so just like the center of our angle here of ABC is B, the center point of our angle DEF will be E. So I'm just going to go ahead and over here, I'm going to create my point for E. All right, so we're going to build DEF over here. Now, in order to copy this, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a circle. Now, this circle that I'm making right now doesn't really matter the length. What matters is that I'm going to start it on B. All right, there we go. Now you'll notice that created 2 points on these lines. All right, so now what I'm going to do, and in fact, before I do that, let's get rid of that. I want to take this circle that I've just made here on B, I want to make that same circle over here on E. Okay. And then let's go ahead and just like we have this point right here that's going from B to C, but it's on this circle, I'm just going to go ahead and create a point right there. Great. So now what I want to do is I want to figure out this distance from this point to this point. So to measure that distance, we're going to be using, once again, a circle. There, great. I know the distance from this point to this point. I'm going to duplicate that circle. And notice that should be that same length. Remember, we use our circles to do that. So now I can create a segment that goes there, another segment that's going to go there. Let's go ahead and label this. So this can be D. And this can be E. Now you'll notice the length of my lines here on DEF are different lengths than these. That's okay. We were making a copy of the angle, not a copy of the lengths, not a copy of these lines. So what we are focused in on is that the measure of this angle, DEF, is the same as the measure of the angle of ABC, which we have achieved. These lines are that same angle apart, and we've guaranteed that through these circles. Okay? All right, so we've copied lines, we've copied angles. Now we're going to learn about creating a perpendicular line, and not just any perpendicular line, a bisector. So that means it has to cut this line in half, this segment. So in order to do this, I'll show you what I'm going to do, and then I'll explain why this works. So I'm going to start at B and create my circle that goes all the way to A. And I'm going to do that once again, but this time starting at A and going to B. Okay, so same length there. Now, what that means is that this point up here at the top is the same distance from A as it is from B. Okay, because both of them were using the same radius, the radius of the length of AB. So this is that same distance apart from A and B, which means that along this line, it's at the halfway point. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect both of these that are at that halfway point in between, both above and below. And essentially what we have created, I'm going to kind of use a lighter. You can imagine this as if it were an equilateral triangle. And what we've created here is the height of that equilateral triangle. Okay, or with isosceles triangles, that this point that goes from the top to the middle is automatically going to be the height, which is also always going to be 90 degrees. So it is perpendicular, 90 degrees, and it is a bisector. It went through the middle. All right, so we've bisected a line. Now it's time we bisect an angle. We want to create a new angle that's going to go straight through the middle of this angle. Okay, so let's start by, once again, create a circle. Any size will do. And actually, what I'm going to do, let's reset that. I want to switch to my pencil. I'll do the final thing, the actual bisector. We'll do that dark, but we'll do the rest of these as little pencil markings so that it doesn't clutter all this up too much. So I've got that circle. Now, what I want to find out, what part of this circle is kind of in the middle. So I'm actually going to use two more circles. Remember when we found the middle of a line? I'm going to find the middle of kind of this arc right here by doing the same kind of thing. Start at that point and go there. And now repeat. Start at this point and go there. And hopefully you'll notice that what we've got, I'm going to use a ray this time, something that'll just go straight out. That starting from B, we could go to either of those, but these are right in the middle of those two lines because we used our circles to create circles that would make sure these are the exact same distance apart from those two lines. And there we go. There is my angle bisector of ABC. Okay, now we've created a perpendicular line before, but this time we need to make it go through point C. So last time we created a perpendicular line. Oops. We went like this, did that same thing, and yeah, that'll create a perpendicular line. But the problem with this perpendicular line, it's not going through point C. All right, so that's going to be a problem. So let's reset that. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to have 2 points along here that are going to be that same distance from C. So I'm going to go ahead and start a circle. And there, I've created a circle. Notice I've got my 2 points. On this line, both of them, because this is a circle, are going to be that same exact distance from C. Now, I can start thinking like a perpendicular bisector. I'm going to create a perpendicular line that'll go through the middle of both of those 2 points that I just created. But remember, C is also in the middle of those 2 points. So there. So I just combined what we learned earlier about doing a perpendicular bisector, and I combined that with one new step so that I could use it to create a perpendicular line that'll go through any point. Pretty much every construction you're going to be asked to do is going to be now using the basics of what you've already learned. Okay, bisecting angles, bisecting lines or segments, copying angles, and copying segments. Pretty much everything you'd be asked to do is going to be some combination of using those skills in a creative fashion. So you want to think about what is it asking for. So if I'm looking to be perpendicular, well, I know I'm going to be using some of what I learned about perpendicular from before. Okay, and we were doing a perpendicular bisector, so cutting it in half. So if I find a way to put C in the middle, then I can cut that thing in half and create something perpendicular. Okay, so we're just going to now at this point be recycling the things that we've learned before. And in your assignment, And on your tests on this, that's what you're going to be asked to do at the higher levels of this standard, is to combine those things, those basic skills of copying and bisecting and creating perpendicular segments, using those to create new figures. Okay? All right, so let's look at this. We're going to use construction techniques and the construction tool below to construct a line that's going to be parallel to the line and through point P. All right, so here's what I want you to remember about parallel lines. Parallel lines are always the same distance apart. So we need to create something that's somewhere else, let's say up here, some other point up here, that it will be the exact same distance from this line as point P is from the line. So if we want same distances, once again, let's use a circle. Now, I'm not just going to go to the line. I'm actually going to go a little bit past. The reason why I'm going a little bit past is I actually want 2 points for this purpose. And let's go ahead and, just for the sake of clarity, I'm going to call this point A. And I'm doing this largely so that I can say what things are, and let's call that point B. So up here, I'm going to create a new point A. So we'll call this A prime. Okay, now I want to create a B prime. B prime is going to have to be the same distance from A prime as B is from A. So let's go ahead and use another circle. I'm going to switch to these pencil things because we're going to start getting a lot. All right, so there's my distance. I'm going to go ahead and copy that circle up here. So now where this point is, that's going to be my B prime. It is the exact same distance away from A prime as B is from A. All right, so now these 2 points are the same distance apart as those 2 points are. Now I want to have another circle that's going to measure the distance from A to P. All right, and I'm going to copy that and put that over there. I also want to measure the distance from our point. Let's zoom in a bit. Let's get rid of that. So I want B here. So I want to measure that distance from B to P. Oh, I need to be able to, so let's zoom out just a tiny amount there. So from B to P, let's duplicate that. So that this is going to go from B to P. And now where my A prime centered circle that goes to P and my B prime centered circle that goes to P, where those intersect, that point right there, that's going to be our P prime, our new P. Okay, now this is not the only way we could have done this, but pretty much all variations are going to be that. I'm just making sure that up here I'm creating pretty much an equilateral triangle once again that's going to force point P prime to be the same distance from the line as point P is. All right, so let's now connect P to P prime. And there we go. 2 parallel lines that at every point they will stay the exact same distance apart. Okay, let's use construction tools to create a line that is going to be perpendicular to the line and through point P. Well, this looks kind of similar, except rather than a segment that we were given before, this is a line. But that's really not going to make too much of a difference. Let's get that place where we're going to create, once again, this kind of equilateral triangle, or this not equilateral, this will be an isosceles triangle. But essentially that puts P in kind of a middle point between those 2 points. And now let's create our perpendicular bisector to both of those points. And now going through P, we've now got perpendicular, and it is going through point P. Okay. Think carefully as you work on the following problems. Think about, do I need to create a similar length? Well, remember, we use circles and duplicated circles to create those same lengths. Do I need to create straight lines at similar lengths? Remember how we are going to use these circles and lines in different ways to create different figures. Think about what it's asking you to do and which of our tools and which of these skills that I've shown would best help you to do it. I haven't covered every single possible construction out there, but I've given you the basic tools that you can combine in different ways to make the constructions it will ask for. Okay, good luck.